Welcome to this November episode of Dead Last, the show in which we rank all of your favorite horror films, and this month we switched it up a bit. I guess a month or so ago, I asked all of YouTube to email me a list of your 10 favorite vampire movies, in no particular order, just whatever 10 you loved the most. And then what I did then was I took all those lists and I marked down every single time that a movie appeared on them, and I narrowed it down to the 10 films that appeared the most. And that's what we're ranking today. It's going to give us the 10 best vampire flicks of all time. And we're ranking them, which is, and that's pretty awesome. So we took those 10 movies, I sent that list out to my patrons, and they ranked them, and I got like 34 rankings this time around, which is that's a good number. And if you've never seen the show, here's how it works. Those lists were then giving a score. Like the number 1 movie got 1 point, the number 2 movie got 2 points, and so on. The movie with the least amount of points wins, and the one with the most points is dead last. But I'm not gonna do this alone. As usual, I've invited some panelists into my virtual house because they couldn't come in unless I invited them. Although for one of them I did not need a literal invitation because she's 2 rooms away. And it is the return of Christy, my wife, coming back to the show after a couple-month absence. So welcome back.
Hi.
Also coming back onto the show, we had her on for our anthology episode, and returning to the show is Sarah. Welcome back.
Hey Josh, thanks for having me back.
And in the meantime, you've had something exciting come out, have you not?
Yes, I had my first short story published in an anthology called Roots, an anthology. All the stories in it are interconnected and take place in the same general setting. My story deals with a carnival that has some mysterious things going on.
And next up is the first time on the panel for one of the patrons, Sable. Welcome back. Well, welcome to the show for the first time on Dead Last.
Thank you. I guess you could say welcome back because it may have popped up on your channel before.
You also are a big lover of vampire lore.
Vampire lore, witch lore. If it's creepy and weird, I probably have information on it somewhere in my skull.
Well, thank you for coming. Thank you for coming on board to the show. I'm glad to have you guys. And this was a very, very interesting list to get because a lot of the lists when we come up with them, I feel as if there's a very obvious winner and a very obvious dead last candidate. And when you had this list, I didn't know what was going to be where. So this was a very fun one to check out. So let's take a look at the list. And to remind everybody, I got 34 rankings, including mine, which means that the best possible score a movie can get is 34 points. That's if everybody ranked a movie first place. The worst possible score that a movie can get if everybody ranked it dead last would be 340 points. So knowing that, let's move on to our dead last movie. And coming in at dead last with 232 points is Interview with a Vampire. It was ranked dead last 4 times. The best score that it got was first place, which it was ranked first place 1 time. On the panel, we all ranked it pretty low. I gave it my dead last, and everybody else gave it 9th place. I think it should be noted that all of the movies on this list are pretty damn good, and there's nothing bad about Interview with a Vampire. Except Tom Cruise. I have to say, Brad Pitt gets a lot of accolades for his performance in that, and he gives a good performance as Brad Pitt. I never really get the feeling of him being this tormented, saddened man that is, like, twisted in his motivations. And, Tom Cruise is Tom Cruise, and Christian Slater is Christian Slater, and Antonio Banderas is whatever Antonio Banderas is doing in this movie. I don't know. The art direction is gorgeous, but the cinematography direction, like the camera direction, everything about that feels very flat to me. And for a book that is so full of sex and sexuality and sensuality, it has like maybe 10% of that maybe in the movie. It just felt a little on the bland side.
Honestly, I had the opposite feeling about Tom Cruise. I thought this was one of his better roles in terms of Tom Cruise movies. I really felt like he was committed and was like, I'm going to be the best bisexual vampire that I can possibly be. Brad Pitt really was just, knowing that he was miserable the entire time that they were shooting that film explains a lot. Kirsten Dunst, the best of the bunch. For such a young age to give that performance, it was fantastic. But I mean, overall, I love Interview. It's not my absolute favorite all-time vampire film, but it's one of my favorite vampire films.
There's so much about this movie that could have been better. The set design, everything was gorgeous. And yes, it would have been nice if while I love Christian Slater with a passion, originally River Phoenix was due to play the part, but tragically died. And, I think River Phoenix could have elevated that part and maybe made Brad Pitt seem less like a piece of cardboard. It's the whiny vampire archetype, and I don't love it. And yes, the best actor in that movie by miles on a level that cannot be described is Kirsten Dunst's performance. Her performance of being a physical, 11, 12-year-old girl and playing essentially a 60-year-old woman is absolutely stunning to watch. I mean, it's never really felt more than just an art project to me because of all of these things.
My experience with it is I hadn't seen it since it actually came out, which obviously I guess late high school, early college, I think. So when I rewatched it, I think I rewatched it about a year ago with a friend. I was like, oh my God, this is so homoerotic, which just completely was over my head at the first watching, and something that didn't stay with me. But I feel like they did a painstaking job of planting that with the decisions with the hair and even the costuming. You do not have to go that feminine at that time period. And they did. So I don't understand then why they just ignored it. Looking at the art direction and the costume design and you're like, okay, this was discussed. Like, this was in meetings, but then it let's just show it, but not. It's like that whole, tell me you enjoy homoerotic cinema without telling me you enjoy homoerotic cinema. Oh, Interview with the Vampire is one of my favorite movies.
So then now we're going to move on to our number 9 movie. And here we go, because we have a tie. At number 9, with 211 points each, it comes down to the 1922 Nosferatu and From Dusk Till Dawn. To find out which of these movies is better, we're going to go to our tiebreaker. Normally I would go to one of my vampire-friendly guys out there. Might go to Matt Mastrella, but since we're doing kind of like a female-oriented panel, I'm going to ask Matt Mastrella's wife, Ayumi, instead, and see which one she prefers. Ayumi, what do you think? Is it going to be Nosferatu or From Dusk Till Dawn?
My pick is Dusk Till Dawn. I love the movie. I love the actors in the movie. I love the music. I love the snake dancer. I love George Clooney, Danny Trejo, and what was the name?
Tom Savini.
It's much better than, what was the name?
Nosferatu.
Better, much better.
Okay, so it looks as if that makes our actual number 9, Nosferatu from 1922. With 211 points, it was ranked dead last 6 times, and the best score that it got was first place, which it got ranked twice. 2 people ranked it first. On the panel, we were all actually fairly similar. Sable and Sarah, you guys both had it in 7th place, and Christy and I both had it in 6th place. So, we all had it kind of on the lower end of the middle. But Sable, how do you feel about Nosferatu?
I mean, it's 100 years old, almost, right? Because it's 22, right? So
yeah, it's gonna be 100 years old next year.
Yeah, we're kissing 100 years old, and it can still suck you in, and it still makes it fun, and it's scary, and it's also kind of funny in certain respects, but not funny, haha. But like I don't know, it's one of those movies that it is the archetype, and you can't deny its influence on every bit of both, horror and noir, even, just all like creating a villain that is so iconic to the point where if you just mention it, it's created its own genre of friggin' movies, for crying out loud. We're talking about the genre itself.
Before I started watching, I was convinced that Nosferatu was probably going to be my dead last because it's a silent movie and it's, old school. And I ended up enjoying it and having a good time watching it way more than I thought I, remembered that I would. Visually, it was fascinating. Some of the shots in that movie were just gorgeous, and it actually held up very, very well. And I mean, let's face it, this is a movie that for a long time people were convinced that they went out and cast an actual vampire to play the guy because they just thought he was that creepy. I mean, that's how good that he was as an actor. And some of those shots are just very haunting. And this one just really nailed it. And like I said, I had a lot more fun watching it than I thought I was going to.
It's so pretty, and there's like points where it looks like it's lit by like flickering candle, and it's warm, and I really enjoyed it. It was completely entertaining, and even like the guy was he Hawker? What was his name?
Hutter.
He's like such a dick. He like gets out of the carriage and like just throws his bag at the guy, and then like goes to the restaurant and is like beating on the table, and then like when he gets tired of the book, he just like on the crowd. I'm like, I know you have to be a little bit bigger in like silent film, but I don't think it gives you the right to throw things at other people.
Like the rest of you, I went in with very low expectations. I saw it a really, really long time ago. I want to say like freshman year of college. And I wasn't really drawn in back then. It could have just been my mood at the time. But then when I started watching it for this, I was like, hey, this isn't bad. This is actually kind of fun. And a lot of the imagery, because I am such a huge fan of the Bram Stoker's Dracula, I noticed all of these shots that were within Nosferatu that I was like, he stole that from this. And so every time something would pop up, I was like, oh my gosh, that is the scene completely shot for shot. That is that scene from Nosferatu. I'm like, that's insane.
So then that means that number 8, also with 211 points, is From Dusk Till Dawn, which was ranked dead last 6 times as well. So it had the same number of dead lasts as Nosferatu. And the best score that it got was first place, which it got 3 times. On the panel, fairly consistent here. Christy and Sarah, you guys both had it as your dead lasts. I had it a little bit higher than that. I had it in 9th, and Sable had it the highest out of us, but only at 8th place.
I think it kind of took the concept of a fun action movie and just were like, hey, there are vampires and we must destroy them now. Like that's where I have so much fun with it. It doesn't take itself seriously. It doesn't even attempt to reinvent the wheel. It does, again, have some weird problematic moments in it, but for the most part, it's so much fun. I don't know. The second Selma Hayek comes out, and I mean, there are many reasons to enjoy when Selma Hayek comes out. I mean, let's be honest. It's violent and gory and fun. And it just, I don't know. It just kind of fits that gritty, dirty, weird backwater world. But otherwise, it's just too much fun. I can't help myself.
The beginning of it, I'm not hugely into just really horrible people being the protagonists. I understand that that is a thing that can happen and it can work very well, but I really hated Tarantino's character. Like, he just rubbed me so wrong. Although I have to say, Harvey Keitel and his little family, I loved them. The minute they came on, like if it had started with them and we'd followed them for the first half of the movie until they met the brothers and the brothers came in at that point, I would have had this a lot higher ranked, because that little family unit was so interesting and engaging. And the fact that he was a former preacher and his daughter's clearly like, Dad, why don't you believe anymore? There was just a lot more to mine from them than from just watching these two guys kill a bunch of people for whatever reason.
Quentin Tarantino's character, I absolutely hated his performance, and like I could not care. I couldn't care less of what his motivations were or anything. I mean, it even just his acting, it was so out of place. Like and to think that the first half and the second half are the same movie is just mind blowing to me. But part of the reason it's good is because he's done. I felt like you were supposed to feel like George Clooney, like I felt like you were supposed to feel like sympathetic towards him, that like he tries to take care of his brother. Do you know what I mean? Like I feel like they were trying to do that, and it just was like I'd feel nothing but that. Yeah.
Well,
I feel like we're saying the same things now.
The people's opinions of this movie really seem to depend upon how they feel about that first half, because I do know quite a few people that love the first half but don't like the vampire stuff, and they would prefer if it was just this crime drama. But I feel like even the crime drama just feels like typical Tarantino stuff, and it almost at times feels like a Tarantino knockoff in a way, because it just feels like somebody that's like trying so hard to be Tarantino, even though it actually is Tarantino. But I do everything from the moment that Salma Hayek starts to dance until the ending of the movie, I think is a blast, and it's so much fun, and it's just nonstop ridiculousness. I feel as if the first half was a Quentin Tarantino movie, and then when Salma Hayek walks out, Robert Rodriguez said, "This is mine now." And the other note that I have about this is I really feel as if like when the script was written and then they decided to make the movie and they cast Quentin Tarantino, I do have this image in my head of him saying, "Hey guys, this is great. Before we start shooting, I need to do a quick rewrite." And then just takes one page and just writes, "Salma Hayek puts foot in my mouth." And that was, okay, let's shoot. All right, so that'll take us on to our number 7 pick. This was another one where it's very tight. These next 3 movies are all within just a couple of points of each other. This is a very tight race here. But at number 7 with 202 points is Dracula, 1931. The original Bela Lugosi version, which was ranked dead last 2 times. It got two dead last rankings. The best score that it got was first place, which it got 3 times. On the panel, we all had it, again, somewhat similar. Sarah, you had it the lowest in 8th place. Christy and I had it a little higher in 7th place, and Sable, you had it the highest in 6th place.
I do not enjoy any of these movies. Like, I like all of these movies. It's difficult to rank, but you do have to pick losers. This one, I appreciate the historical context of it, but it just didn't suck me in like Nosferatu did. And I just, it was kind of boring. And I hate to say that because I know it's important, and it has set this archetype for Dracula that, you know, everybody, you know, pictures the cape and the vest and the whole thing. But yeah, it just didn't do it for me. I was just bored.
When I'm watching a whole bunch of movies that I think are all really well done, and the decision that I made was to go by which movies I had the most fun watching. And it's a little bit on the slower side, which is, in context of the time period, makes perfect sense. But in terms of watching it right now, it's not as fun. There's still some great points in it that are really enjoyable. But I will say that me ranking this a little bit on the lower end of things was 100% about the ending. The ending, I feel as if really it's almost as if there wasn't an ending at all, because it's basically just they walk into his crypt, kill him off camera, and the movie's over. You don't even get to see it happen. Dracula doesn't even put up a fight. It's very anticlimactic. And that took some points off for me, but I will always add on points for Bela Lugosi's performance because it is solid.
I mean, the thing about this particular Dracula is, and that the modern version is got the massive disconnect, and I think where a lot of people feel the modern disconnect is the music is missing. We forget it was either you're recording audio for speech or audio for music. You couldn't overlay them at the time. So that's why theaters had organists and had people playing music attached to them. Even till at the beginning of the talkies, they were doing that, including Dracula. So the score is lost almost to time comparatively, but it makes everything. It makes the dramatic walk down the stairs. Yeah. It makes those moments. And if you don't have it, it doesn't work. I just happened to have it kicking around, and I was like, you know what? I'm going to sync it up as best I can. It was a little off, but it was better than not having it.
It all comes back to that ending. They go, he's killed off camera. And then why is Van Helsing hanging back while the two lovers go? He's like, I'm just going to stay here. And I'm like, why? What you going to do?
And his words were not directly. What's he gonna do down there?
No, you must go.
But aren't you coming with us?
Not yet. Presently. Come, John.
It was all just a prank. Like, Dracula was just around the corner, and him and Van Helsing were there, and Dracula was just like, ah!
Yeah, so that was the entire reason why I had it ranked at that low, because everything else made more sense and got me past over that hump at the end, and it all worked together cohesively. And that ending is just, it's a non-ending.
Mina!
Well, then I think that this will be a good comparison, because at number 6, with 199 points, only 3 less points, is Bram Stoker's Dracula from 1992, beating the 1931 Dracula by a mere 3 points. It was ranked dead last 3 times, so it's got one more dead last than the 1931 Dracula, and its best score was first place, which it got 1 time. which the 1931 Dracula got it 3 times. But anyhow, on the panel, Sable, you had it ranked in your dead last. It got your dead last. Christy and I both actually matched and had it in 8th place, so also pretty low. And Sarah, you had it the highest out of us, and you gave it your 3rd place. And I'm torn. Do I want to hear why it's dead last? Or let me go. Let me hear first why. Let me hear first why it got ranked 3rd.
Okay, I adore this film. I know it's cheesy. I know it's over the top, but oh my gosh, it's so visually stunning. I dove into that world and I loved it. And it was the first version of Dracula I saw after reading Dracula. It's one of those movies that I love in spite of the flaws. I know what the flaws are and I don't care. I love the way this movie makes me feel. And also Sadie Frost as Lucy is iconic. She is the best Lucy I have ever seen on any of the different versions. And I've seen a lot of versions, but she's my favorite. Her with her flaming red hair and her delightfully she's awesome. I will say in my defense, I know Keanu does not belong in this film. He doesn't. He certainly gives it his all. He's trying very, very hard.
But I feel it's less that Keanu wasn't properly chosen and more that they didn't give him the note that he needed to chew scenery like he was a termite on meth. But everybody else isn't serious.
Yeah.
That's just it. Literally everyone. Winona Ryder is chewing scenery in that movie. While that can be fun, it's also trying to take itself too serious. And that's where the disconnect is for me. You do have some of the best costume design. I don't know. I understand the intent, but it all came out clunky. And also they needed to understand some stuff about impaling people. If you're gonna show impaling people, show what it was. Don't half it.
Yeah. But I will say that I think the reason why I put this a little bit lower was, I guess, trying to keep an internal consistency, because I actually feel as if this film has the same problem that From Dusk Till Dawn has, because you have the first half of this movie in which you have Dracula is a very creepy, decrepit old man who's disturbing and like maniacal, and he's the villain. And then halfway through, you suddenly go, oh, but wait a minute, we forgot to mention that he's actually kind of young and handsome, and it's sort of a love story. And yeah, it's a love story now. Now you have sympathy for him. Okay, you didn't earlier when he was this old cackling, like gross guy in the castle, but now you do. And it's a weird sort of break for the movie for me, because I do feel the second half is very different than the first half, as particularly in the presentation of that character. And I don't think it's as jarring as From Dusk Till Dawn, but I figured for my own internal consistency, I had to factor it in there.
Yeah. I have it ranked low because there are definite issues, and I agree with everything that Sable said. But then I also agree with everything Sarah said. As long as it's stylized a certain way, I can find enjoyment out of it. And the campy stuff is fun. And I do have nostalgia wrapped up in it too. I remember it was such a big movie. And I remember going to see it with my friend Shelly. We saw a lot of these movies together. They do create a weird world that, and like Sarah said, you like the way it makes you feel. I like the way that world feels. I don't particularly like it, but I'm not going to turn it off, and I'm going to look at it. And the things that they did right, they did do right. The things that they did wrong, they were entertainingly wrong. Like, I still like, I can never not like Keanu. And I almost want to like call him up and be like, they should have just talked to you more. Like, they should.
I know where the bastard sleeps. I brought him there, to Carfax Abbey.
All right, well, let's move on now into the top half of the list. Going on to number 5, at 198 points, only 1 point higher than Bram Stoker's Dracula. I know that this is going to make Sable angry. It's 1 point higher is Near Dark, which was ranked dead last 4 times. And it was ranked number 1 3 times. And on the panel, it was a very consistent voting. Me, Christy, and Sarah all ranked it as 5th place, which is where it landed. And Sable, you ranked it in 1st place, so obviously the most love here. So what was it about Near Dark that got your number 1?
It just hits this note in my head of vampirism being fun. That's why it feels more realistic in that respect. This movie just feels like what being a person who has no connections, no ties, nothing could really feel like. It's gritty, it's uncomfortable, it's odd, but it's aliens. It's the cast of aliens being vampires. And why am I ever going to get upset about that?
Everything that I had from like 6 to number 1 were all movies that I love, and I love this movie. This is a great movie. So what it all came down to was which of the movies do I have the least problems with, and Near Dark, I have a really hard time getting over that blood transfusion plot point, because so much of the ending hangs upon that, and that sort of suspension of disbelief that it kind of fractures it for me a little bit. It does not sink the movie in any way, shape, or form. It just, if I'm finding things to not like about it, that's one of them, because this movie it's great. It's a pretty fantastic film, and I feel like I'm reaching for things to mark it down on the list for, but there's not a lot outside of that transfusion, and maybe the score. The score's not great.
I'm gonna say that 90% of my score is based solely upon Bill Paxton, 100%, because anytime he was on screen, he was amazing in it. And just as you would imagine Bill Paxton would be as a vampire. It was just really, he was so much fun to watch. It hurt my heart a little. But in the other 10% goes to what you were saying about how dirty and gritty the vampires were. I really feel like besides Let the Right One In, that movie was really the only one that didn't have like the vanity aspect of being a vampire. And there was no real style to it, which, I think that people tend to, overly stylize vampires because of that, the aspect of vanity and romanticism. And I don't know. So I appreciated that. But yeah, 90% goes to Bill.
Well, like Christy, I had never seen this one before. In fact, I had actively avoided it because I didn't think I was going to like it. And instead, I started it up and I'm like, this movie is really good. You could not predict what they were going to do. They were the most unpredictable vampires I have ever seen in anything. There was just no rhyme or reason. Like, you understood why they were doing what they were doing as they were doing it, but like, you couldn't predict what was going to happen. And I liked that unpredictability. But no, I liked it. And I'm kind of surprised that Near Dark isn't a bigger thing than it is.
Well, yeah, I have to say it also pains me to see this at number 5, but when I look at the 4 movies that are ahead of it, I get it. And hey, speaking of those, number 4 with 191 points is What We Do in the Shadows, which, now here's the weird thing, was ranked dead last 7 times. It actually got the most dead last rankings out of all the movies on the list. And it was ranked number 1 4 times, but most of the scores for it were all really high, which is how it ended up in 4th place. But it did get ranked dead last 7 times. So either, apparently, if you did not like this one, you really didn't like it. On the panel, it was all fairly consistent. We all ranked it very high. Sable, you had it as 4th place, which is where it landed on the list. I had it slightly higher in 3rd place, and Christy and Sarah, you guys both had it in 1st place, And Christy, I know that you were just like chomping to talk about this one.
It's just like my favorite. It's my favorite movie. It's my favorite movie. There's not anything I wish would be better or that didn't work for me. I mean, from the opening with the roommate scene.
Should we be good? Peter's 8,000 years old. We're not going to have Peter at the meeting.
They look like they're having so much fun. You feel how much fun they're having. Like, and the concept is hysterical. Everything works. Every single thing works. I mean, and the werewolves are so ridiculous. And oh my God, in the ending when they come in and the guy has the sweater and he's like, I'll try not to go woo woo.
Is that the moon or? Yes. Hopefully we won't, you know.
No, but like I wish I could be more eloquent in describing how much I love it. I feel like I'm just like a blubbering mess, but I do. And I want to hear another person who thinks it's the best talk about it.
There's not a dull moment in that movie. It is so much fun. It's just, it's a laugh riot from start to finish. I love the music choices. I love the acting choices. I know the majority of it was probably all improv, but oh my gosh, is that script improved beautifully? I mean, it is just so well done. It's one of the best mockumentaries of all time, in my opinion. And I absolutely adore the love story between Taika Waititi's character and his lost love who's in the nursing home. I love this movie. It is super fun. I wasn't sure if it was going to be my number one. And then I watched it again. I was like, nothing beats this.
It's very respectful of the whole idea of vampires, and like it plays with the lore. And most of the jokes in the movie aren't just like, you think about vampire comedies and it's usually like some slapstick comedy typical stuff, and then there's vampires in it. But these were actually jokes that were built around existing vampire lore, which I thought was actually a great touch, because it wasn't just generic comedy, slap some vampires in there. I don't know. There's some great little horror moments in the movie. There's just a lot to really love about it. It's a hard movie to compare with the other ones, but if I'm actually like making my criteria of what I love here, how much fun I had watching it, and how much it works as a vampire movie, it hits all the notes, and there's no reason I'm not going to give it a high marks.
It fits in so many ways the vampire everything. It's ridiculous. It's over the top. It has every type of vampire you want. It is an epically good piece of film. It's directed fun. It's written like somebody who genuinely cares about making something funny, fitting a genre, and also creating something nobody had seen. You feel and connect to each character regardless of if they're only on screen for 2 minutes, you know, and the connection may just be that they're ridiculous, but it's so much fun in their ridiculous nature. Like, it just, I don't know, it brings me joy.
Here we go. Going into the top three. Hope you guys are ready for this, because this was all somewhat close, although number 1 and 2 were super close. But at number 3, with 167 points, is Let the Right One In, which was ranked dead last one time. It did get one dead last ranking. It did get, of course, a number 1 rank as well too. Got 5 of them. 5 people put it as their number 1. On the panel, I ranked it the lowest at number 4. Sable had it a little bit higher in 3rd place, and Christy and Sarah, you guys both had it in 2nd place. And I just want to talk about this movie for a second, because I think that actually this movie's fascinating, and it is beautiful, and it is a small masterpiece. And I think that this is a wonderful example of filmmaking and how film can hoodwink people. Because Wikipedia describes this as a romantic horror film, and people will talk about how romantic that this movie is, and every single one of those people were apparently watching a different movie than me, because the movie I'm watching is about a very old creature that is preying upon a child, and it puts you in Oscar's shoes, that you feel that same temptation and that allure, and it is so well done. The movie is so great with all the special effects. They're all so subtle and well shot and convincing, and then you have a bunch of CGI cats that are straight out of, like, Cats and Dogs Part 3, The Return of Furbell, or whatever it is.
I think of it as kind of a modern fairy tale in the way that it's shot, the way that the story unfolds. It feels very much like a story about something to be scared of as a child. A warning that a parent is giving to the child through the telling of this story. It really does suck you in because you just feel for Oscar and the fact that he's this little kid that really doesn't have any friends and everybody picks on him. And the only person that gives him the time of day is this vampire that who knows how old they actually are. So why wouldn't he go off with the one person that's showing him affection and is showing him that they care for him, whether it's real or it's a persona that they are putting on. It's a very deep and human story, even though this is a vampire story.
Yeah, and mostly it's the decisions that they made in shooting. I mean, it's so atmospheric. I mean, you feel cold and you feel lonely. There's nothing. There's no character to any of the landscape or the buildings, or there's like it's completely like devoid of like any warmth at all or any character. It just seems like a very harsh place to be living. You don't have scenes where there's a lot of people, you know, or anything like that. It seems cold, lonely, and dark. But there's so many. It's so subtle, and there's so many little moments that I'm just what this, like, these people together, however they did this, they just did it right. They continually, except for the cats, I give you the cats, they continually made the right decisions, and it ended up being beautiful. It's a beautiful movie. I just really love it. I really love it.
Yes, this is a movie about grooming. We can't pretend that it's not. I don't see a love story. Never did. It's a corruption. And I feel like that needs to be the phrase we use. And I adore that movie because it shows villainy can have any face. Villains are everywhere and they can control us if we let them. And sometimes we don't even see all of the steps that got us to where we are, but we're being controlled. And Oscar won't see it until he is an old man who is sitting there in a hospital bed with their face torn apart after literally saying the name of the villain that did this to them before pouring acid on their own bloody face. But yeah, no, stunning movie. I love the movie. Don't get me wrong.
Moving on to a slightly brighter topic. Slightly
not grooming.
Well, yeah. I feel like there's no way to talk about Let the Right One in an optimistic, cheerful way. So let's talk about a movie that we can talk about in an optimistic, cheerful way, because we're talking about the number 2 spot with 131 points is Lost Boys. It was ranked dead last one time, and the best score that it got was first place, which it got 5 times. On the panel, there was fairly consistent, with Sarah ranking it the lowest in 6th place, a little bit lower there. Christy, still pretty high in 3rd place, and Sable and I both ranked it in 2nd place. So Sarah, you had this in 6th place, which, you know, I'm kind of curious. I'm kind of curious on that.
Let me just say, I do love this movie. I just liked the ones that I placed ahead of it.
Yeah,
more. I like reinventions of fairy tales. It's one of my passions in life, and it's Peter Pan with vampires. You can't not love that. I love the fact that they bleed sparkles. It's an iconic cast. It's an iconic movie. It's so much fun. My only complaint is that we never got the Lost Girls movie that was intended to be done, or the prequel that Kiefer Sutherland was going to be. He was like, I'll do it. Let's do it. Let's do the prequel on how the Lost Boys came to be. And I love the idea that they had come up with. Why didn't we do this? Why are there no good Lost Boys movies after the first? Why did we have to get 2 crappy sequels? I want the ones that were intended and sounded so much better.
I don't think I ever really considered it that high up in my brain pan of being like, oh God, do I love watching that movie. And holy crap, do I love watching that movie. It is so much fun. There are 2 things that I find weird. One of which is when Sam is in the comic book store and he gives the big speech about how the comic book should be arranged.
You can't put the Superman number 77s with the 200s. They haven't even discovered red kryptonite yet. And you can't put the number 98s with the 300s. Laurie Lamaris hasn't even been introduced.
No, you shouldn't have number 75 with the 300s because it's not a 300. It's number 75. But the more important point that I want to make is when this movie came out, this is old man Josh talking right here. When Lost Boys came out, there was a lot of talk about pretty boy vampires. And oh, how glamorized the vampires are. You look back at them and you compare glamour pretty boys today to the Lost Boys, and the Lost Boys look like dirtbags. They were dangerous looking guys. In context with like something from, say, Vampire Diaries. You know what I mean? It's a big difference.
You know, you saying that they're not pretty boy vampires, the amount of Aquanet that went into that hair for 90% of, you know, the one vampire that doesn't talk, the other not Alex Winter blonde vampire as well. But for the most of that movie, like I adore that movie because it just creates this marvelous, weird microcosm that is so like a slice of everything from the 1980s could be held in it forever. Like it's a time capsule. But I also think that the set designer is a very unique person because everything in Corey Haim's bedroom confuses me. The giant, and I mean excessively large poster of Molly Ringwald. And it's like the picture that's on the outside that I am about 92% sure is Rob Lowe.
It is.
Where he's like half shirt, ab touching. I'm like, you know, this was definitely a very gay set designer going, I'm putting this for me.
I don't think anybody can be my age and not have nostalgia tied into this movie. Especially as a girl, it was just like Kiefer Sutherland was like such a heartthrob, and it ages so well. I don't see like an 80s version of vampires. Like I like that version. It doesn't. It's not time coded for me. I think that Corey Haim, like his over the top, like funny, like 80s wardrobe, it doesn't even feel that age to me. It's like even in the time they picked the right things to make fun of. Yeah, I just think it holds up so well, and it's you can't say that it's not just so much fun. And you know, it's the Lost Boys. Sorry, I know we're not supposed to swear, but like I thought it was going to be number 1. I'm actually legitimately surprised that it's not.
And you're right. It is the Lost Boys. And, you know, it was the places they were, the things they did, the impulsivity that they incurred, with the exception of the random slaughter of those punks. That always seemed like
the surf Nazis.
Thing to Run DMC and Aerosmith.
I was so confused by that's like the one thing that makes zero sense to me is everything in that sequence. I'm like,
So that takes us to number 1, officially the best vampire movie. And it's number one because it got 128 points, only 3 less than The Lost Boys. Lost Boys and this movie went back and forth and back and forth and back and forth the whole time. But at 128 points is Fright Night, which I'm very excited is the number one movie.
Me too.
Fright Night for real. The lowest rank that it got, because this is the only movie on this entire list that was never ranked dead last. Every other movie was ranked dead last at least one time, but not Fright Night. The lowest rank it got was 8th place, and the best score that it got was 1st place, but that's no big deal because every single movie on this list was ranked number one at least one time, but Fright Night was ranked 1st place 7 times. Which is the biggest number that a movie was ranked in 1st place on the panel. Sable, you had it the lowest in 5th place. Sarah and Christy, you guys both had it in 4th place, but I had it in 1st. And again, I will tell you that I think that quite a few of the movies on here could easily be the number one movie, depending upon which watch that I've given it. Whatever, like if I did this list again next year, I might have something else in 1st place, but holy crap do I love Fright Night. To me, it is the perfect blend of horror and comedy. Jerry is kind of supposed to be sort of like the ultimate villain, but Jerry's actually kind of forgiven. He gives Charlie several outs, like he's trying to avoid confrontation. And he's constantly just trying to find ways out of it, which I think is an interesting character point. The soundtrack is great. The special effects are fantastic. Everything about this movie is fantastic. It is a slam dunk. I'm happy that it's number one. Again, I would have been happy with any of the movies that are in the top 5 being number one. But there's a special part of me that is really pleased with Fright Night being in 1st place.
I guess what I most liked about it is it was unpredictable to me. Like I thought I had it pegged of what it was going to be, but it wasn't. And I remember specifically the club scene. I was like, oh wow, this is okay. Now I genuinely don't know how the rest of this movie is going to go. The aspects of it that were 80s, I super loved. Like, what's her name, Mrs. Darcy? Like her hair, I don't know why it just like got long. Her little barrettes are gone. It's like she's turned into this like weirdo like sex goddess, which, you know what, I think out of everybody in the movie she won because she just randomly got a really nice dress out of that. Yeah, I just thought it was a ton of fun. I liked it. That one was probably the most surprised at how much I liked it.
I adore Fright Night. Let's be fair. But you know what I don't adore? William Ragsdale's performance in 90% of this movie. For like the first half of the movie, he's so whiny as Charlie. I'm like, or he like yells too much. And I don't know why that's a thing where he just is yelling at people. I'm like, you know, that like they're standing literally next to you. You do not have to yell the line that you're saying. I will say that rewatching this for the first time in a long time, I became slightly sexually attracted to Chris Sarandon, which is not something I was expecting out of anywhere. I'm pretty sure Christy's with me on this one.
I know, because I was just like, oh my God, because it's like, it's Prince Humperdinck. It's like, what? I didn't know he ever had a moment where he was sexy. Like, I did not.
So hot.
I was with you too. So, I mean,
yeah, it was one of those things that I wasn't expecting out of anywhere. And yes, seeing Marcy Rhodes / Darcy, aka Amy. It's funny because like the actress in real life came out as a lesbian, and that's 90% of my brain going, oh, poor girl. You're in the wrong place right now.
I loved it. I love this style of comedy. I love the campy aspect of it. I love Chris Sarandon in this. I mean, he's dreamy as Jerry. It's not something you would expect after Humpadink. I love that Jerry's a fruit bat.
Yes.
I mean, has that ever been done before or since. I mean, he's eating fruit every single time you see him. And I love that that is his vampire genesis story. Is that he was turned by a fruit bat. I find that so funny. But no, Fright Night, I love this one. I can't be mad that it's number one. It's so much fun. It's so good, and it's definitely one of my absolute favorite horror movies ever.
All right, well, so there you have it. 10 movies, and it's official. It is official. Fright Night is the best vampire movie of all time. It has been decided by all of YouTube and by the patrons and by my panel here. We have narrowed it down, but let's take a look at this list. There's things on this list that I don't necessarily agree 100% with, but I'm very happy with this list. There's not much in here that I would argue with. This is probably one of the toughest lists that we have ever done in terms of quality, but I really enjoyed doing this. I hope if you guys have sent in your lists way back when, that you're happy to see some of the movies that you chose on here, and patrons, I hope you're happy seeing the representation. Again, this was the first time ever that every single movie got at least one first place nod. And almost every single movie got a dead last nod. Only one movie out of the 10 did not get ranked dead last at any point. So this was a very interesting list. But thank you guys for sending in those lists. Thank you to my patrons for participating as always, and even the ones that did not participate and just just help support the channel and kept it going. And of course, as always, I want to thank my panel. Thank you, ladies, for coming on board and helping me to narrow this down and give these opinions, because I thought that this was a ton of fun, and I hope to see you guys all back, and I hope you guys will come back and watch again very shortly for another great video. Thanks, guys. We'll see you later.
Bye.
Bye.